The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. The radical. This is Fundamental
the Yaron
Principles
Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday afternoon here in Puerto Rico. Another beautiful day in Puerto Rico. And yeah, sun is shining. It rained a little bit, but it always rains. Things are good. Hopefully everybody is having a great weekend, enjoying wherever it is that you live. Yeah, I'll take off the headphones. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. I do that to hear the intro music to make sure that I'm on beat when I do that. All right. So thanks, everybody, for spending a little bit of your Saturday afternoon with me. I hope you're all having a good time. And today we're going to talk about fear. We're going to talk about fear with regard to climate. We're going to talk about fear with regard to COVID. We're going to talk about fear with regard to, I don't know, whatever you want, Ukraine, Russia, immigration, China, trade, any public policy issue, you can come up there, and fear is a big part of it. It's how we actually get policy passed. It's actually get motivated people. It's actually get people excited. But we're particularly going to talk about this new area in psychology, this new this new psychological phenomena called eco-psychology. I'm going to talk about eco-psychology. And that is treating people who have are traumatized and are living in constant fear of the climate. So we're going to talk about that. We'll also talk about a project to bring green electricity to New York City, and why it's taking more than 17 years and might take a lot longer to get it done and costing a fortune. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So we'll talk a little bit about climate change, about the psychology of climate change, how it impacts people and all of that. You can, of course, participate, support the show, and ask questions. Get involved by using the Super Chat feature of YouTube. We have got our usual $600 goal that we always shoot for on these shows. You can click the Super Chat button at the bottom there and make a contribution, ask a question, make a comment, engage. So it's a great way to both participate and a great way to support everything that I'm doing, and a great way for us to be, for you to be engaged with the show and be on live. So those of you who are live can do that. Of course, those of you who are not live can support the show by going to YaronBrookShow.com/support, Patreon or Subscribestar, and you can become a monthly supporter of the show over there. I will have start having sponsorships. I'll see. Maybe tomorrow I have to set that all up. We'll see if I get around to doing that tomorrow. If not, we'll start it next week. But we will start to have sponsorships for the show as well. So we are on the move, trying to get the Yaron Brook Show to be financially lucrative, to keep it all going. Also, don't forget to like the show. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and don't forget to to like, subscribe, and share. Like, subscribe, and share. Best friend Hank says he's just finished shoveling the snow from his walkway. I don't know what snow is. What is snow? You're gonna have to explain that to me. What does it mean? To shovel? I don't know what that is. So sorry for all of you who live in very cold climates, except for Jennifer, who actually likes it. But the rest of you, sorry about that. So it turns out that there are a lot of people, young, mostly young, I think, but I think of a variety of ages, who are truly psychologically now disturbed because anxious, obsessed over issues like climate. I mean, I'll just read you a quote out of this this article. This is an article that appeared in, where did this article appear? New York Times. This article that appeared in New York Times. And it's called Climate Change Enters the Therapy Room. Enters the therapy room. Right? And so this is just the beginning of the article. It would hit Alina Black in the snack aisle at Trader Joe's. A weave of guilt and shame that made her skin crawl. Something as simple as nuts. They came wrapped in plastic, often in layers of it. That she imagined leaving her house and traveling to a landfill where it would remain through her lifetime and the lifetime of her children. She longed, really longed, to make less of a mark on the earth. But she also had a baby in diapers and a full-time job and a 5-year-old who wanted snacks. At the age of 37, these conflicting forces were slowly closing in on her like a set of jaws. That's good writing, right? That's a New York Times writer. That's good writing. But what the article describes, and what I think we all know if we engage with the culture, if we know people out there in the culture, if we read the newspaper, if we look at TV shows, if we see what's going on in the world, there are people out there, and it's hard to tell how many, but primarily young people, who are just overwhelmed with fear. Overwhelmed with fear. For a lot of young people, that fear is focused on climate change. They're being told, and they continue to be told, that their actions, their day-to-day actions, are destroying the earth. Indeed, they've been told this since pre-kindergarten. That every time they throw away plastic, fish are dying. The penguins are being killed. They always choose the cute animals, like penguins and little furry, beautiful animals are destroyed by the child's action. Think of the guilt, the fear that invokes. Alina Black, described in the article, spends her evenings after the kids are down to sleep scrolling the internet and reading scary articles about how the world around her is collapsing. Droughts, fires, hurricanes, all caused by the nuts she buys at Trader Joe's, all caused by her actions, by the car she drives, by the air she breathes out, by the trees that were chopped down to build a house, by the plastic that is created from fuel, by the energy consumed when she turns on the lights. It's all destroying the very place where her kids are going to grow up, where kids she would hope or is planning for to have a future. And that future is gone. In a sense, her generation, but she specifically, is killing the future for her kids. The article describes a grandfather who is a scientist, who breaks out in tears every time he thinks about the world that he's living for his grandkids. He's a glacier scientist. For, I don't know, how long has this been going on? It's certainly since the early 1990s, right? So this is 30 years now, 30 plus years. We are being constantly, systematically being bombarded with the idea that that we are killing the planet which we rely on for our lives. We are being fed the myth that we're in this perfect planet that is completely structured to provide all of our needs. And that we, through our actions, are destroying it, are collapsing it, and by doing that, committing suicide. And we are convincing them, we're convincing people, have been convincing people, have been nonstop. And a whole generation, I'd say probably 2 generations now, have been brought up on this and are convinced that this is true. And what does this do? It creates guilt and fear. It so reminds me of Christianity, which creates guilt and fear. And what is the purpose of creating guilt and fear? I mean, Christianity creates guilt. You know, it's your fault. Jesus got crucified, your fault. You know, you are a sinner. You've always been a sinner. You always will be a sinner. And fear of God's wrath, fear of an afterlife in hell, in eternity in hell. Fear that nothing you can do in this world will ever make up for your sins. Sins that you might not even be aware that are being committed in your name before time. Fear and guilt. And, you know, this article describes how there's a whole field now of eco-psychology, of psychologists that have become experts at treating people who feel this anxiety. And it turns out that they're not a few. People who, you know, have developed all kinds of psychological techniques to deal with this. Now, a big part of the psychological techniques, at least from what I can glean of this article, it's not a very in-depth article, is to tell people that it's not their fault, that they can't control what Trader Joe's sells, they can't control the world, that yes, this destruction is happening, but it's really those evil corporations that are doing it. It's really the evil government that's doing it. It's not them. They have no choice. They shouldn't stress about it because they shouldn't internalize the blame. It's not their fault. And you know, they just should accept it. This is what's happening. You know, this woman who is getting therapy, she says, obviously it would be nice to be happy, but my goal is more to just be able to function because, I mean, the world is closing in on her. This is real stuff. This is really scary. Why guilt and fear? Well, because guilt and fear are great mechanisms by which we can control people. Guilt and fear is how we control people. They feel guilty, they want to do something. They're afraid they have to do something. Something to make the guilt be a little less and make the fear. And of course, if you make people afraid, one thing fear is very good at doing for most people is it's very good at shutting down reason. It's very good at, I have to do something now. It's kind of this, in a sense, survival instinct. We don't really have one, but you know, these survival emotions come to the forefront. I have to act, I have to do something, because I'm afraid. And all you need now is somebody to come and guide you and tell you what needs to be done. And people are willing to do absurd, ridiculous things in the name of climate change, not because they've gone through a rational process of estimating what's happening and what's going to happen and how we can mitigate it and what are the projects that could reduce the effect of this and how they can live a better life and how human beings can deal with it and handle it and support it and survive and thrive and whatever. There's no fear. The whole point of making people really, really, really afraid is to shut that down. Because what the powers to be, what the people who are really pitching this don't want you to do is find solutions. The one thing they're not interested in is actually solving the problem. Because once you solve the problem, they don't have their hooks into you. They don't have the guilt. They can't control. So they want you to be in the state of fear. Because when you're in the state of fear, you're not a good thinker. You're not particularly rational. You're not looking for solutions. You're looking to lash out. Again, not everybody who experiences fear experiences it this way, but yes. And they keep knocking down the solutions. Whenever you propose a solution to climate change, assuming it exists, right? Assuming it's a problem. Whenever you propose a solution, they knock it down. They find a reason not to do it. They find a reason to do it. Okay, let's build lots of solar panels, but what about the rats? What about the cacti? What about, I don't know, make it up, some worm or something. Let's build a dam. Oh, we can't do a dam. If you do a dam, the trees will be flooded and then they'll suck less CO2 out of the atmosphere. And what about all the habitat for the spotted owl? I don't know. They don't want solutions. So I've got a perfect example of this. So we're going to take a little detour now, and we're going to talk about this one example of a project that's supposed to help reduce carbon emissions, right? And reduce our dependence on those evil fossil fuels. And let's see how people deal with this, right? And you can see that nobody wants solutions. Nobody wants solutions. What they want is for you to be afraid. What they want is for you to feel guilty. What they want is for you to be vulnerable. All right, so this is a project in New York State that has the potential to provide 20% of New York City's electricity. That's a lot of electricity, 20%. And the 20% of New York electricity would come from existing dams in Quebec, Canada. So it turns out that Canada produces a huge amount of hydroelectric electricity, more than they can consume. And the Canadians, because they're really nice people, well, not so nice images right now coming on television from Ottawa, but they're supposed to be nice people, are willing to sell that electricity to New York City. And of course, because the dam is already built and because it just uses water, it's green. It's considered green. It's not Niagara Falls. It's in Quebec. It's already existing dam. They're not building any new dams. God forbid we actually build something and change nation. So the dam exists. We want to get the electricity from Quebec to New York City. And this would, I don't know how expensive it would be, the electricity, it doesn't matter, because our goal here, remember, our goal is to reduce carbon emissions. So we want to stop using fossil fuels to produce electricity. So here's the perfect alternative. Perfect alternative. So, okay, so how difficult could this be, right? Quebec to New York City is not that far. Not that far. It's 339 miles. I'm not even sure if this is the direct route or not the direct route, but 339 miles from Quebec's remote forests to New York City, right? And we could provide 20% of the electricity for New York. It would diversify. You would have fewer power outages, and of course, you would reduce the dependence on carbon fuels. Now, this project was first proposed 17 years ago. 17 years ago. It is funded by Blackstone, a private equity group, private money. It's Chaplain Hudson Power Express, putting $4.5 billion into doing this. And you would think that this is pretty straightforward, right? You power transmission in Quebec, you put up lines, you pull the lines down to New York City, and you're done, right? Not that hard. Most of the way between Quebec and New York City is forests. Nobody lives there. Nobody's there. So you put the power lines in and, not that expensive, and it's pretty cool. Oh, no. Wait a second. You can't put power lines up. Although power lines are like ugly. I'm not going to, we've got pristine nature here. You can't build towers and put up power lines in pristine nature. That is unacceptable. There are a million not in my backyard groups along the way that oppose this. There's massive environmental challenges. I'm sure there's some bears who live there, as Jennifer says, that wouldn't like it. I mean, it would spoil their view. Vacationers who hike might happen across a power line, and that's not acceptable. You can't do that. So here we are with an effort to get, quote, clean power to New York City. That would fund a significant part, 20% of all New York City's electricity. That's a lot. Can't do it, power lines. Can't do it because not in my backyard and all the rest of it, right? All right, so let's put it under the ground. Well, you're not going to put it under the ground. I mean, this is 300 something miles of woods, mountains. You'd create massive environmental damage if you did this. You'd have to knock down trees. You'd have construction equipment. You'd dig in the ground. Who knows what kind of worms and animals live down there under the ground. It would take years. Just think of the cost. The cost would be astronomical. It would make it completely infeasible. $4.5 billion would not be enough to do it. So there's just no way. It would take forever, and it's just not doable. You cannot. It would be too expensive. All right, so we can't do it overhead. You can't do it under the ground, so what do you do? Now here is where you can see private enterprise, you can see private entrepreneurs, private equity, actually coming out with a brilliant idea. I mean, this is really cool, right? What did they decide to do? They decided to run the cables under the water. So they can go in the lakes of Connecticut, get to the Hudson River, and go along the Hudson River all the way to New York City. Bam! There's the power. No, not in my backyard, because you can't see the cable. It's under the water. There's absolutely, I mean, this is brilliant. Of putting it under the water. I mean, who would have thought of that? I wouldn't have. So you can't go in uninhabited forest. You can't bury the lines because it's too expensive. So instead, you put it under the water. Now, this is not a solution for other potential power lines. It's not a solution everywhere. They're going to have to find their own imaginative ways. Maybe they can beam the electricity to space and beam it back down. I don't know. Elon Musk will probably figure something out. But instead, they're going to go in the water, in the river. All right? Well, that's great. So here they are, ready to lay the line in the Hudson River. And then they discover the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has sectioned off a portion of the Hudson where sediment was contained by polychlorinated biphenyl, PCBs, that were dumped decades ago in the river by General Electric. And if you trench the river to put the cable in, you'll unearth the toxins, and that's going to create, obviously, environmental disaster. Things, people will, fish will die, people die, who knows what will happen. All right. So Blackstone said, okay, we get it. We don't want to do that. We'll go around. So there's I guess, a way to go around the sections. They go around. It's a 118-mile detour, all right? So this will take another 3 years, but we'll go around. Expensive, but we'll do it, all right? Fine. Now, in addition, in order to do all this, right, there were complaints about what's this going to do to fish. So Blackstone had to hire environmental consultants who spent the summer of 2010, this is 12 years ago already, watching patches of blue lupin for endangered Conner blue butterflies and fostered elfins, a threatened species. I don't know what any of that means, but you get the drift of that, right? They spotted 2 Conners and wrote a plan for avoiding damage to wildflowers upon which the butterflies rely. Arrangements were also made to protect bald eagle nests that might be present during construction. not in the long run because the cable is going to be in the water, but during construction, and identify shagbark hickories. Anybody know what a shagbark hickory is? Big enough for the endangered Indiana bat to roost. There's a Indiana bat that's endangered that roosts in New York. I mean, who knew that there was an Indiana bat in New York? Then, of course, they found out that they couldn't dig beneath Haverstraw Bay, I don't know where that is, but somewhere in the Hudson, because there's an endangered Atlantic sturgeon lives in Haverstraw Bay. So they had to redraw the route again to go around Haverstraw Bay. Now, all of this, in spite of all of this, in spite of them going around and doing the environmental inspections and the environmental this and environmental that and trying to appease this group and trying to appease that group and trying to appease everybody, in spite of all of it, this project is opposed by the Sierra Club, local New York-based energy companies, a bipartisan group, Republicans and Democrats, Democrats and Republicans, of lawmakers, and the labor union, oppose this. The Sierra Club argues, listen to this one, that importing power from Canada does two bad things for the environment. One, it threatens the development of in-state renewable energy projects. So if you import energy from Canada, you won't build solar panels in New York. Solar farms and windmills in New York. But wait a minute, why do you care where the energy comes from? Isn't what's matter that it has a low carbon footprint, supposedly? Why do you want windmills in New York? You can get the energy from Canada. Let them do it. So no, we're against import. We're against trade. God forbid energy comes from a different state. And this could all cause environmental damage in Canada. Maybe, if this plan works, Canada will build more hydroelectric dams and export more energy to the United States. Hydroelectric dams are really evil, according to the Sierra Club, and we don't want to give them an incentive to build more, so we want the project to fail. Even though Hydro-Quebec, which is providing the electricity for this, has sworn on their godmothers, whatever, that they have no plans for new hydroelectric facilities. By the way, all of this I am cribbing off of the Grumpy Economist. This is all in John Cochran's latest piece. You know I love John Cochran's blog. He's brilliant. He's excellent. This stuff is great. So I'm basically stealing this from John Cochran. So I encourage you to go to John Cochran. But that's not just the Sierra Club, right? So there's an operator of the soon-to-be-closed nuclear power plant called Indiana Points, right? They're against it because they want to be able to charge high electricity prices in the state of New York. So the power companies in New York, upstate New York, want to be the ones selling New York City electricity, and they want to be able to charge high prices because they don't want competition. And the Canadians are coming in. Evil Canadians again, ruining everything. And they're providing clean energy, lower prices. That's not good. So, you know, you've got the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Local 97 is arguing that it threatens upstate renewable projects and would eliminate the need for additional gas-fired plants to be deleterious to New York State energy jobs. So they're worried about jobs. God, and it just goes on and on and on and on. Right? And think about this. I mean, this is the best line in the article, and it's great to see John Cochran saying this, and I wish more people got this, but he says, more generally, this whole story is a reminder why a legal system of property rights, rather than political permission, is the only way to run a successful economy. In other words, this is inevitable if you give pressure groups economic power. This is inevitable if you give politicians economic power. The beauty of a system of property rights is You own the river, you get a say in what I do in your river. You don't own the river, none of your business, stay out of it. You own the land, I can put my stuff on your land if we come to an agreement. If you don't, I can't. I mean, the developers of this project have pledged millions of dollars to train New Yorkers for green energy jobs. They've funded an environmental trust with $117 million. Talk about gangster bribery. Extortion, not bribery. This is Don Corleone type way of doing business, right? Where the environmentalists demand to be paid, otherwise they'll stop your project. Of course, the supply project, they haven't got a contract yet with the City of New York for the electricity, and the City of New York right now needs to get permission from the New York Public Services Commission. And the New York Public Services Committee has one group that keeps, it's a nonprofit called Riverkeeper, that is dedicated to protecting the Hudson. And they don't like the project because they're saying that the transmission line could lead to additional dams in Quebec that would possibly expose indigenous people to methylmercury, a neotoxin created by microbes in freshly flooded soils that can pass up the food chain to people who live off the land. Now, it happens that there is actually exactly zero evidence that methylmercury is a threat from any of the dams in Canada. So you see, they come up with excuses. They just make them up out of thin air. Hypothetically, dams can cause this extraction of mercury that can then poison everybody. It never happens, but it could. Never-ending list of reasons why not to act. A never-ending list of reasons why not to solve the problem. It's much better to be afraid. It's much better to feel guilty. It's much better to do what you're told and to stay quiet. Best friend Hank says, Yaron keeps swearing today. Where's my swear pool? I thought dollars were associated with me swearing. What's happened, Best friend Hank? It's damn. Yeah, no, it's damn. It's damn. This is the key line in Cochrane's article. I mean, the one was the positive. Property rights solve all these problems. The second one is the key line in terms of the incentive, motivation. Obviously, the answer here is simple. Don't build anything. Freeze in the dark. Or more likely, how about $100 million grant for us too? The whole environmental movement is not about solving problems. It's not about finding solutions. It's about stopping. It's about regression. It's about stagnation. And it's about extortion. And it's about eliciting fear, because people who are fearful can be manipulated. People who are fearful can be controlled. People who feel guilty can be told that it's okay to freeze, that it's okay to stop, that it's okay that their hard-earned money is going to groups they've never heard of, protecting stuff they don't care about, because it's all for some common good. It's all for something that's supposed to alleviate their fears, but actually doesn't and makes them all worse. All geared ultimately, towards the destruction of capitalism, but more broadly, it's geared towards the destruction of freedom, of any kind of freedom that we have. Be afraid to produce, to build, to act. Now, that is one project That is one project that is well funded, where people are figuring out as they go along and figuring out solutions. It's going to take 20 plus years, and they're probably going to get it done in spite of all the obstacles, and they're going to pay people $100 here, $100 million here, $100 million there, and they're just going to pay it all out, and they're going to get it done. Blackstone will get it done. But think about how many projects that would improve our world, that would make our life better, that would make things cheaper. And in the case of green energy, or whatever you want to call it, make us less dependent on any one source of energy for electricity. How many projects never take off or never started? Somebody has an idea and then he goes, God, the regulators would never allow that. Scrap that. God, that would cost me a lot of money to bribe all the environmental groups. Scrap that. God, there's no way they'll let me do that. Scrap that. How many? How much richer, how much wealthier could we be today if we built just straight construction stuff? This is the world of atoms, not the world of electrons. In the physical world, if we just built stuff the way we did in the 19th century, the way we did in the early 20th century, how much richer, how much more efficient, how much more productive would we be? I mean, California has a drought. Let's build desalination plants. They have a drought. Well, it rains a lot somewhere else. Let's build a canal. We have traffic jams. Let's tunnel under them. Let's build more roads. Oh, there's not enough housing. Let's build lots of skyscrapers. If you can fit 7.5 million people into Hong Kong Island and the adjoining areas, you can filter a lot of people into the Bay Area. A lot. Imagine, I'm a civil engineer in a previous life. I am. Imagine if civil engineering came back, if we could actually do something. If civil engineers were actually allowed to do civil engineering projects, build highways and tunnels and dams, skyscrapers, and water projects. And imagine if all of that happened in a world of private property. How cheap that would be, how efficient that would be, how effective that would be, how rich we would be. I mean, and if there was, let's say, a climate crisis, imagine if we deployed all of private resources, because private people care about, I don't know, let's say there was a crisis, about not dying. Deploy those resources, deploy that energy, deploy those smarts, deploy that capital, deploy that ingenuity to solving the problem. It would be like that. It wouldn't be a problem. We'd solve it like that. I mean, I was just reading an article about a company that Bill Gates has funded. Don't hold it against them. A company that Bill Gates has founded. Maybe it's not a company. It's a research project out of MIT. I think it's MIT. About putting this material up in the atmosphere that would cool the planet. So if it's warming, if it were true, if it really is catastrophic, we could put up a chemical out in the atmosphere. We could test it, we could try it out, we could do all kinds of things, and it would bounce the sun rays back to the sun, and it would cool the planet, and we could do a little bit to start off with and see what the effect was and play around with it and figure it out. But that's the kind of project that would never be approved. That's the kind of project that people are so afraid of. God, that's human beings playing God. You can't do that. What if it goes wrong? Then we fix it. And the fundamental here is the fundamental cause of this fear is not climate change. For all I know, climate change could be real. The fundamental fear is not this idea that the sea levels will rise. Maybe they will. I don't know. Best friend Hank, thank you for the support. I appreciate it. I don't know. Let's assume they will. The fundamental cause of this is not, I don't know, more hurricanes or more droughts or whatever. The fundamental cause of the fear, again, as Alex Epstein has shown many, many times, as others have shown, but Alex in particular, almost nobody, very few people die today of climate-related problems. So even if they're accelerating, even if they're growing, that risk to our actual lives on a day-to-day basis is very small. Now you might say, oh, in the future, maybe it'll get worse. Maybe. But why, even if all of that were true, why would I not be afraid? Because I know every one of those problems is solvable. Because I know every one of those problems has a technological solution. And I have a profound belief in the ability of human beings to solve these kind of problems. I always say, they built dikes to protect Amsterdam hundreds of years ago from flooding. You think we can protect Florida today if we had to? Of course we could. We build houses today that don't blow away when a hurricane hits. We can have, Israel today provides, I think, all of its water from desalination plants. And yeah, that requires a lot of energy, right? Nuclear, fusion, thermal from Quebec. It's a little far for California, but California could build nuclear power plants, have a little mini nuclear power plants at every desalination plant. Or natural gas. Why am I supposed to keep Amsterdam out of this? Amsterdam's a great example. I love Amsterdam. So the real source of the fear, is a lack of trust and belief in human reason. A lack of belief in human beings' ability to solve problems. A skepticism about reason and science and engineering. A skepticism that is fed by our elites and by the people in power who constantly convince people that technology cannot solve problems, that technology is the problem. Big tech. Evil big tech. The real source of this is the fact that we elevate emotions over reason. We've abandoned this positive idea that we had in the 19th century, and again, I think in the early and mid-20th century, that we can solve anything. That there's no challenge that nature throws us that we can't solve. And also, and here I'm inspired by David Deutsch's book, but it's something I've argued many times, and many others have argued many times. Oh, thank you, Trika. Wow. Really appreciate that. $99.99. Trika says that the app won't let him round it off to 100. $99.99 is great. This idea that human beings were born into, as a species, we were born into this perfect environment. We were born into this planet that's going to protect us and shield us. And everything's just there. It's a Garden of Eden. This goes back to the Garden of Eden myth, which I talk about periodically. Action Jackson, if you're listening to this, you need to make a series of short videos of me talking about the Garden of Eden myth, because I think it's important, and I think it's powerful, and I think people might actually watch it. Anyway, maybe I should do a series of lectures on biblical stories. Somebody's done that already. Oh, yeah, that's right. Jordan Peterson. Anyway, I could do one. So the idea is, what do they call it? Spaceship Earth. This I'm taking for David Deutsch. Spaceship Earth. We have Earth It's this spaceship built for human beings, and if we don't screw it up, we can survive here forever. Spaceship Earth is amazing. But that's just not true. The Earth is unbelievably inhospitable to human life. It would be very difficult for human beings to survive on this planet without us changing it. The only reason we can sustain 8 billion people on planet Earth today, or 1 million people on planet Earth, the only reason we can sustain 1 million people on planet Earth, or even 500,000 people on planet Earth, is by using our reason to change the world to fit our needs. If it floods, we build dikes, we build dams. If there are droughts, we figure out how to channel water from the lake to do our agriculture. If we need to hunt, we develop tools and weapons and strategies to get the animals. Nature doesn't like us. We're not a species that has evolved to survive with the way the world is. We're a species that evolved to change nature so that we could survive, to change the world, to make it ours. Wes, thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. $50. We're chugging along here, guys. What makes human beings is the fact that we must, as a requirement for our survival and a requirement for our thriving, change the world to fit our needs. We must change our environment. We must exploit nature. Otherwise, we die. So if you really want to be afraid, then be afraid of the shutting down of technology. Be afraid of not allowing us to build power plants and power lines and big canals and desalination plants and all the things, and electricity for air conditioning and all the things that allow us to live in Las Vegas in the summer and in Alaska in the winter. Because we couldn't without heating and without air conditioning, without electricity, without transportation. And neither thing that required the human mind. And this is the Garden of Eden story. The fall, as described in the Garden of Eden, in Genesis, the fall of man, which is getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden, is the beginning of being human. The fall represents our need to work to change the environment to fit our needs. The fall represents reason and free will. Before that, we were animals. Animals don't have reason, don't have free will. They just accept the environment the way it is. They succeed or they die based on the seasons, based on the environment. Human beings don't. Human beings change, adapt. We don't. Somebody reminds me of a Leonard Peikoff talk called The Evil of Respecting Nature. Yeah, our job isn't respect nature. Our job is to change, manipulate, exploit, there's a word for you, exploit nature. For what? For our own well-being, for our own survival. So it's not planet ship Earth. No, we as human beings are in a hostile environment, in a place not built for us. It's built for the chimpanzees and the microbes and the snails and the owls, and it's built for them. But even there, if it changes a little bit, some of them will die out. Not built for human beings. For human beings to thrive in this environment, we must change it. We must adapt it to our needs. So the fear that's being elicited here is a fear of is a fear that is its source is our belief that we cannot, that we will fail to change environment to fit our needs. It's a fear that's focused on a lack of belief in reason, a lack of acceptance of reason and its ability to be its ability to change the world. No, it's hostile. It's hostile not in a sense of intention. It's hostile in a sense that you just go naked into nature. Everything around you, and if you cut off reason, everything about you is going to kill you. You're not going to survive. Reason allows us to pacify nature. Hostile not in intention, but hostile in action. And the first human communities couldn't grow very much because the environment in which they lived was too hostile for human flourishing. They had to figure out solutions. It took them tens of thousands of years to figure out those solutions so they could grow and expand and go into other areas and change their environment so that they could live and they could grow. But it's, again, not intentionally hostile, but existentially hostile. Absolutely. Having animals running around all around you, cheetahs, lions, I don't know, that's hostile. Having snakes, that's hostile. Again, the snakes are not there to, their purpose in life is not to get you, but they will get you if you don't do something about it. And of course, weather. Human beings are not good in cold and extreme heat. They need water. Droughts. That's nature being hostile. Again, not intentionally, of course. Oh, Frank says mosquitoes. God, I hate mosquitoes. Yeah, I have no idea why we don't wipe out mosquitoes. All right. So, the real challenge and the real way to overcome the fear is not to start knocking them down. Oh, it's not, the earth isn't warming, and this fact is wrong, and the hockey stick is wrong, and this is wrong, and that is wrong, and all these things are wrong. The ultimate solution, because, and by the way, this is the same thing with COVID. Same thing with COVID. Oh my God, this virus is going to kill us all. Virus has always been around. We have a capacity to think, figure it out, solve problems. Give us the facts. Let us decide how to live, how to behave, what to do. Should we wear masks? Shouldn't we wear masks? What kind of medicines work? What don't work? What vaccines work? What don't work? We'll figure it out. We'll solve the problem. What's there to be afraid of? Well, you have to be afraid, because if you're not afraid, how are we going to lock you up? How are we going to control you? How are we going to make you dependent on government? And of course, it's not even, and here's an important point, it's not even the politicians and the people at the top are scheming, evil, conspiratorial rulers of the world. No. For the most part, they're afraid. They're petrified. They have no clue what's going on. And they're scared. And the way in which they respond to fear is by inflicting stuff on you. If I'm scared, I'm going to make you scared too. And I'm going to make you do what I tell you. And that's going to help shield me. I'm more and more less likely to believe in the evil genius madman in the background scheming to take control over the world. I've never met anybody competent enough to do that. It was bad. Bad people are just not competent. And they tend to be super emotional, super fearful. But if you look at all these issues, the solution to any real issue, any real problem, is reason. It's to think more. If we undermine reason, all we're left with is emotion. All we're left with is fear. All we're left with is responses to fear. All we're left with is control. So if we're going to fight climate change and COVID authoritarianism and the left and the right and stupid politicians rushing us to war and fear of trade and even fear of China, what we need to elevate, It's going to be impossible to knock them down, knock each one of them down, not each one of them out, prove that each one of them is wrong. Don't think of this, don't think of that. What we need to do is elevate the methodology. What methodology? The methodology of reason, the methodology of science, the methodology of the way human beings make the world their own. All of these problems are solvable. All of these problems require thinking, require freedom, and they're solvable. But that's not the environment we live in. I mean, just look at what's going on every issue, from COVID to climate to I don't know, the war with Ukraine and Russia, fear-mongering, hysteria, panic, reason, thinking, facts, evidence, thoughtful analysis. Nobody cares about that. Nobody wants it. Because for years and years and years, for decades now, we've been taught that reason is not efficacious. Reason won't solve the problems. Thinking is not the solution. And we've just been taught to accept the fear. That's what these psychologists are telling this woman. Just accept it. World is going to hell. You just have to accept it. You have to learn to live with the fear. You have to learn to manage the fear. Don't look at the source. Don't look at the actual solutions. That would be relying too heavily on flawed human beings, on flawed reason, and on flawed ability. No evidence. Zero, zilch. So much of this world can be explained through kind of just looking at it from the perspective of people are just guided by emotion. And the dominant emotions by a lot of these things are fear and guilt. Oh, I see in the chat they're talking about bats from China. I don't even think the bats were from China. The closest relative to the coronavirus was found in bats from Laos. Not even in China, Laos. They might have made it to a lab in China, but the bats themselves might be from Laos. Anyway, who knows? We don't know. We might never know, given the way China's behaving. Might never know where COVID actually came from. All right. Let's look at, all right. Let's start with some $50 questions. We got friend Harper with a $50 question. I have many friends who vow never to bring kids into the world due to climate catastrophe. Oh, I meant to mention this. One of the reasons birth rates are down. One of the reasons anxiety, suicide, drugs, opioids, all these things are up is because of fear. My job's going to be taken away. The economy's going to crash. We're going to have hyperinflation. And by the way, the earth is going to boil over and we're all going to die. Who the hell wants to bring kids into a world like this? And there's going to be war and the Chinese are going to conquer us. So when people want to explain the reduction in birth per capita, I say it's fear. I say it's psychological. It's all about fear. Nobody wants to bring babies into the world if the world's going to end. If the world's horrible. If there's no hope, no chance. And it's more than that. Because I was on a panel at a conference talking about why people are having less sex. And I think it's the same reason people are having less sex. There's statistics that show, survey data that shows that people are having less sex today than they did 30 years ago in all age groups, but particularly young. Young people are having 35% less sex than they did 30 years ago. Now, why is that? Well, if sex is a celebration of life, if sex is an affirmation of the value of life and the value of living, you're not going to have sex if you're depressed. You're not going to have sex if you're afraid. You're going to have sex. You're not going to have sex if you think the world's going to end tomorrow. I mean, people think, What would you do if you knew the world's going to end tomorrow and you had 24 hours to live and people say, oh, I'd have a lot of sex? No, you wouldn't actually. Because that part of you would shut down. Sex is an affirmation of life. And it shuts down. The desire for it shuts down with fear. It shuts down with the knowledge or the conviction that the world's going to end. It works exactly the opposite. It's impossible to be a real hedonist, enjoy, just have pleasure, because the pleasure becomes meaningless if the world's going to end tomorrow. And that's why all this catastrophism, I think, is causing people to have less sex. Of course, the other thing, I should have mentioned this during my rant, I'll get to Finn Hopper's question in a minute, is that people have no sense of how good life is today. That even if it gets harder, even if things get bad, it still will be 1,000 times better than it was 200 years ago. All right, Finn Hopper goes on. I've been taking in books. I've been taking in books I hear about on Power Hour, that's Alex Epstein's show, and try to share that there is no catastrophe. But I'm not a scientist. I only wish to resolve uncertainty. Yeah, I mean, that's all you can. But the point is, I mean, my attitude is, I don't know, maybe there'll be a catastrophe. Let's solve it. What's the catastrophe? Where's it coming from? I think we can solve it. So, I don't think there's a catastrophe. But even if there is, so what? We got brains to deal with catastrophes, among other things. I mean, human beings have always dealt with catastrophes. The lions have been stealing our babies and eating them. How are we going to deal with that? They're big and strong, powerful. Ooh, scary. Well, build a weapon, catch the lions, kill them all. So, this is how we function. We solve problems. Joe says catastrophism is a direct consequence of Christian. I can't say that word. Somebody's going to have to phonetically tell me how that's pronounced. Anyway, yes, it's out of Christian doctrine. The whole idea of catastrophe, it really comes out of Christianity, and Neo-Plato Christianity in particular. There's a whole pessimistic view in Neoplatonism and in Christianity about the end of the world, the end of civilization. Civilizations have to decline, have to go off. There has to be a reckoning. There has to be a day of judgment. Every period in Christian history has always predicted that the day of judgment is just around the corner. People don't know this, but Luther, for example, believed that during his lifetime, everything's going to end. You know, what do you call it? Jesus was going to reappear and we were going to have the big battle between Satan and God, or whatever the story is. Every generation has catastrophes. And we've gone from, but you see, the difference is this. Those catastrophes, the Christian catastrophes, are ones we can't do anything about. Can't do anything. It's predestined. Judgment Day, thank you. It's predestined. No matter what we do as human beings, it'll happen. We have no control over when. It's just we know it's going to happen someday. And this constantly happens. And now, it's not, this is the difference with the Christians. It's not, now it's up to us. Now we're causing it. Now, in Christianity, we're causing it, but we're causing it by our very nature. But there's nothing we can do about it. One of the reasons Christians are terrified of death is in Protestantism, at least, in Lutheranism and Calvinism, you're predetermined in terms of whether you go to heaven or hell. So nothing you do in life matters. So, and almost everybody, according to Luther, almost everybody goes to hell. God's grace is applied to very few people, according to Luther, right? And this is why Protestantism splinters and into all kinds of sects, because each one has a different interpretation of these things. And they're afraid of death because they're going to land up in hell. But they're also afraid of death because they've never lived. See, if you live, if you're actually alive, if you embrace every day, if you make the most of every day, if you live a full life, then okay, it's over. But I lived it. But if you don't live, then you constantly in regret. I wasted the life. I wasted it. And now you're afraid of death because there's no coming back. I don't. Do you remember the question? What was the question? Anyway, I think I answered it. Quick scan if there were any other $50 questions. No. Before I do that, let me just check up on where we are in terms of the super chat. Ooh, we're only $63 away from 600. So, you know, three $20 questions, and then somebody throw in a 10, and we're done. So hopefully, so only $20 questions moving forward. We've got a lot of questions here. Only $20 questions moving forward, and it would be great if we got to 600. So please help us out. All right, let's just go down to $20 questions. Although I do want to do some that are related to the topic we talked about. Okay, Shazbat says, if you want to reduce mosquito population, you can build a bat shelter on your property. They eat 200 mosquitoes per day. There's an easier way. You can genetically modify the genes of a bat, of a mosquito, to basically kill off all the other mosquitoes. They did this. They developed these mosquitoes during what do you call it? Zika. During Zika. And the funny thing is, the Florida mosquitoes are imported from Africa. They're not even local, right? So destroying all the mosquitoes in Florida, for example, would not change the ecosystem, because the ecosystem, this is a foreign invader. And so they developed these, and they were going to release them in the Florida Keys. And I think it was stopped by the environmentalists. How dare you play God? How dare you eliminate a whole species? How dare you intervene? But we have the technology today to basically wipe out, even without using bats, the whole mosquito population. Who the hell wants bats on their property? Ooh, that's spooky. Plus, you might get a coronavirus. All right, let's see. Tom says, what do you know about advanced fission? Fission or fusion? Nuclear technology. Liquid fuel thorium reactors can melt down, eat up nuclear waste as fuel, and thorium is everywhere in the world. Wouldn't this solve our energy problems? Yes. Yes. I know there's a lot of money being raised today for fusion reactors. I know the Scandinavians are very interested in thorium reactors. I know there's a lot of money going into this technology, but it's much more likely to be built outside the United States than inside the United States. Much more likely that China or France or Norway or Finland or Sweden, oh, this is fission, not fusion, build one of these than it is the United States. We're so shut down in terms of innovation at the atom level, at the atomic level. So it's, I don't know much about the technology itself. I heard a little bit about thorium, but there are a lot of nuclear power plants that are super safe, super clean. The French nuclear power plants, the new ones, have no waste. They completely recycle it. Sorry, fission. I get it, fission, not fusion. I don't know much about fission other than I've heard about it. I don't know the science. I don't know the physics. I don't pretend to know any of that. But great. I'm all for it. Put it that way. Go for it. Let's see. Gail says, we tried to gather support for a Declaration of Independence in Canada until I discovered objectivism. Philosophy is the only way. It is. But this is the thing about philosophy. It takes time. It takes a long time. And it's hard work. And it takes the kind of work that is unappreciated. It takes the kind of work that you don't see results for a long, long time. So it's not satisfying and fulfilling because the results are not there. And it takes decades and decades of work. And it's hard and frustrating and disappointing because you work and you work and you work and you don't see the changes in the world. But for me, at least, I mean, the gratification I get is from you guys. I got another email the other day from somebody in Denver. You guys who again, one mind at a time, who have expressed the fact that they're changing, that they are, Gail discovered objectivism. All right, one more fighter for the right cause. And you just do this, and you do this, and you do this. And if we can raise visibility of objectivism, we can raise popularity of objectivism, we get more people to read, more people to think, more people to engage with these ideas. That's how you change the world. You change people's minds. They go out into the culture with a new behavior and new values and new attitudes. That ultimately changes the culture. And then the politics will change. But the problem is that the politics in the meantime are getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Things are deteriorating at an ever-growing rate. And yet, there's no shortcut. It's still true that the only way to stop it, the only way to reverse course, is the battle of ideas. Slow, one mind at a time, unbelievably frustrating. People hate it because there's no action. How many people in my chat have attacked me because I just talk, no action, just talk? Because, and I get it. It's not that I get it. They're frustrated. They want action. Lots of people have told me they left objectivism and joined the alt-right because the alt-right acts. They want action. Yeah. But action without thought, action without the right ideas, action without the right philosophy will only bring about a worse world, not a better one. All right. Frank jumped in. He says, all fear and guilt, distinct emotions, because they are stuck in duality, unlike other emotions, which are more personally resolvable. I don't know that they are distinct emotions. I think fear is a very, 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 more than guilt. Fear is a very kind of primal in a sense that it's a very basic emotion, right? A baby can't feel guilt. Guilt is a sophisticated emotion. Guilt is an emotion that requires you to understand action and consequence, to understand that some action caused harm, that you're responsible for that harm, and that's not good, and that being responsible for the harm is not good. So it requires a whole sequence of events, including a sense of morality. Fear does not. A baby feels fear, can feel fear. So fear is very primal. It's like very similar to the pain at the level of emotion, level of the pain pleasure. It's to let you know that something is really bad, that you need to do something, that you need to act, that you need to protect yourself. It should be an emotion that says, think. Where's the danger? Where is it? What do I need to do? How do I solve it? How do I get around it? How do I protect myself? And the way to resolve fear is, again, and it is personally resolvable in the sense that fear is resolvable through solutions. Through either figuring out that there's nothing to be afraid of, no, there is no crisis here. Or there is a crisis, I know how to solve it. So fear is resolvable. And guilt is resolvable. Guilt requires a different methodology because guilt requires you to think through. And guilt might be earned. Guilt might be a kind of, as fear might be earned. They might be justified emotions that reflect reality. And guilt too, the resolution of guilt is, if you deserve the guilt, to make recompense, to acknowledge it, to acknowledge your failure, to make recompense, and to get it behind you. If it's unearned guilt, to figure out why you feel unearned guilt and to resolve whatever conflicts are within you that brings that about. Let's see. Who did that? Okay. Bradley says, how did you unravel the guilt, fear, and second-handedness from the world when you found Rand? Can you share specific examples? How long did it take? God. I don't know. I mean, I don't think, because I read Ayn Rand early, young, when I was young, I don't think I had a lot of guilt and fear in me. Fear, I don't remember being afraid at all. Maybe some guilt, good Jewish guilt. Second-handedness, certainly. And it took me, I mean, my problems were collectivism and altruism. Those were hard to get over. Those had deep kind of emotional roots in me that it was hard to unravel. And those took, in some cases, years to get out of, maybe 3, 5, 7. And the more you understand objectivism, the more you see the impact of altruism and collectivism in the world out there, the more you see the benefits of individualism, the benefits of egoism out there, and in you, the better you cope, the better you can unravel the BS. But it takes a long time. I don't have specific examples that I can think of off the cuff. Sorry. Let's see. All right, I see a lot of. Ryan Ward says, "Please interview Alex Epstein on his new book, Fossil Fuel Futures." Yes, I have. I think we're doing it in April. I don't have a date yet, but we're talking about an interview. So we'll definitely do an interview around when the book comes out. He wants to have the most bang for the buck. So we'll do it when it's around the book coming out. Hopefully all of you will pre-order the book. And then, but yes, I'll definitely have Alex on the show. All right, let's just go down from the beginning, $20 questions, and then just go through all of them, whether they are part of it or not. Ali says, hi, I want to ask about how we can preserve some cultures from globalization. Let us say Japanese culture, for example. It is unique in its own way. People there are polite, hardworking, civilized. How do we preserve it? Who's we? I don't know who we is. Japanese people can make the effort to stay polite, hardworking, and civilized in spite of globalization. But who's we? The committee responsible for the preservation of cultures? The authoritarians in charge of deciding which culture should be preserved and which shouldn't? I mean, I would argue ultimately that one of the things that makes a culture good is its ability to persevere. Maybe the reason some cultures disappear is because they're no good. So I think there are two things that are needed to preserve good cultures. One, for the culture to be good. Two, for the people in the culture to know it's good, to be proud about those aspects that are good, and to preserve them in their lives, in their actions, in their behaviors as individuals. But we don't want a French language committee. We don't want a cultural preservation committee. The central planners is responsible for the preservation of culture X, Y, Z. Because then we have no innovation, no progress, nothing better. If you want to kill a culture, try to preserve it. That'll calcify it. I mean, part of what makes culture good is the ability to change, the ability to modify, to bring in new stuff, to improve, to grow. But the best thing is to have self-esteem, have confidence in the culture and live it. And announce the world, why it's good. And don't accept that all cultures are equal. Don't accept multiculturalism in that sense. Ali, a follow-up on globalization. I really like the uniqueness of each culture place, and I don't like to think to be the same as the left like it to be. I'm not sure what the left has to do with it. So you like the uniqueness of each culture. I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty cool to go to the Amazon and see some really primitive people living in their primitive huts, eating the food that they ate and dying at 39 from diseases and everything because I like that culture. Who the hell gives a shit what you like, Ali? Sorry, I didn't mean to insult you or to swear at you. But, I mean, those people there are dying young. They're living in horrible conditions. They've got terrible music. They don't have transportation. They've never seen the world. And you want to deny them good civilization, good culture, the effect of globalization, so that you, as a tourist, can see nice cultures. I am 100% for globalization. Let the cultures merge, mixed. Let's get the best out of everybody. And if somebody lives in a primitive culture, I care about them too much to want them to stay in that primitive culture. I want to make it possible for them to embrace what's good, to be the best human beings that they can be. And some cultures make that possible and other cultures don't. So why should we preserve cultures that don't make that possible? But we don't have to not preserve them either. We don't have to have a concerted effort to destroy bad cultures. We just have exposed people to all of it. Let people decide. Let people choose. And who are you to choose for another culture, another people, another individual, what they should and shouldn't do? So don't choose for others. If you want to preserve something about your culture, preserve it in your home. Michael asks, what do you, oh, no, it's not a 20. Oh, here's a 20 for Michael. A lot of people who say they're selfish are really just narcissistic. True. Are just narcissistic jerks. Also true. And give true selfishness a bad name. Absolutely. Let's make it clear that those people are not selfish in the sense that we mean. They're not ours. Dave Goodman says, do you like Martin Scorsese as a director? Looking forward to your review of Bronx Tale. Yeah, I appreciate Martin Scorsese as a director. Do I love any of Martin Scorsese's movies? No. I'm curious if you guys can name any that you think are enjoyable, great movies. I'm sure there were a lot of movies that from an aesthetic perspective are very good. Taxi Driver was very powerful when I first saw it. Some of his gangster movies, very powerful. Do I go back and watch Aviator? Yeah, Aviator was good. Aviator's one I might like to watch more than once. Goodfellas, yeah, it's okay. Wolf of Wall Street, okay. The Irishman was horrible. Horrible. God, couldn't wait for that to be over. Casino's okay. I mean, they're all good. And they're all well made. And he brings out great performances from his actors. But they're not The Departed. I like The Departed. I can't remember what The Departed. Oh, was it like the kind of a mafia in Boston? Age of Innocence is pretentious. So I appreciate his skill, but none of his movies are my favorite movies. None of his movies do I rush, I want to watch that again. None of those that you mentioned. Aviator, maybe. Certainly not Gangs of New York. Hyper-violent, horrible depiction of 19th century New York. Just a complete mess in terms of the way it's described. The way New York is presented. Is it okay to kill a retarded person? Should you receive the same sentence if you kill a normal human being? Or is it more like killing an animal? No, I don't think it's like killing an animal. I think that what kind of sentence you would get would depend on the nature of of the murder. Why did you kill him? Was it out of, I don't know, out of pity because they were having a horrible life? I don't know, something like that. Or was it just an act of murder? You didn't know they were retarded. You just murdered them because you were on a murder spree or because you were in the middle of a armed burglary or whatever, and you murdered them. Then should be the same as you'd murdered anybody. But I think context matters. But generally, I think killing a retarded person is the same as killing a normal human being, unless there are other circumstances. The retarded human being has all the rights of a normal human being, even though he can never live up to fully being human, even though he might be, depending on how retarded they are, dependent on other human beings. He is human, defective, but human. And yes, in, quote, a state of nature, so-called state of nature, he would die. But we're not in a state of nature. So he survives. Who are you? Who the hell are you? There I am swearing again. Who are you to decide, to make the choice of whether he should live or not? From your perspective, he's a complete human being. He has all the rights of a human being. And in that sense, in almost every condition, there is no difference. Michael asks, in your view, is most pornography today nihilistic filth as compared to yesterday? I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on pornography, but yeah, probably. It's probably true of all periods. It's probably gotten worse because people get satiated with the stuff. But yeah, I think most pornography today, most pornography period, is nihilistic filth. And I'm not necessarily anti-pornography, but most of it is pretty ugly and pretty horrible. And caters to the worst in people. Often, not always. Michael asks, reason and emotion is a false alternative. They should be alignment in a healthy human being who takes life's services, values seriously. Yes, they should be in alignment, but they often not. And you don't know that they're always in alignment. So reason is a tool of cognition, emotions are not. Reason is what you make decisions on, emotions are not. You feel the emotion, you acknowledge the emotion, you experience life through your emotions. But decisions, if you have the time, are made through reason. Even when you align your emotions with your reason, you just don't know that every single time it's going to be aligned. So you go with your reason. Now, if they're not in conflict, then it's easy. But the emotion is immediate. You could just act on them saying, yeah, I'm sure it's aligned with my reason. Everything's fine. No. You got to think it through, particularly if it's an important decision. And go by your reason. If they happen to be aligned, that's great. Best friend Hank says, I need to find my inner being. I wouldn't know even where to start. Where would you start looking for your inner being? All right, Adam says, tribalism drives both gayism and all religion theocratization. Texas, Israel, Myanmar, Russia, India, Hungary, Turkey, Poland. God, we got the whole soup there. Is a dark age coming faster than the LP predicted in DIM? Is it already the most immediate danger? No and no. I don't think a dark age is coming anytime soon. I can't. DIM was published when? DIM was published 10 years ago, 9 years ago. So DIM predicted 50 years. I think we're still on course for DIM. I'm not sure there'll ever be dark ages. I think it's hard to tell, but I don't think there'll be a global dark ages. As I've said many times, I think the diffusion of knowledge across cultures, across geography, across the world is going to prevent dark ages. I think some countries will decline and some countries will rise. And that as bad as Poland, let's say, is, Poland is freer today than it was 40 years ago. A lot freer dramatically freer. Poland's not on the verge of becoming a theocracy, although certain things are regulated by religion, but a lot is not. We live in the age of mixed economy, the tilt between kind of a leftist tilt to a rightist religionist tilt. And we squander in the middle, and we go left, and we go right, and we play around in the middle. And yes, we're getting closer and closer to an abyss, but I'm not sure the abyss is inevitable. I'm not sure the abyss is inevitable. Saul Zimet writes, where are you in Beginning of Infinity? The chapters on sustainable and optimism are amazing and totally destroy contemporary environmentalism. Please have Deutsch on. I don't know if I can get Deutsch on. I don't know if David Deutsch would come on my show. I bet he'd do your show. I'm not betting. I am still in chapter 3. I've got guests here, so I haven't gone on my walks listening to books on tape. And I'm not sure what, I have to look up what chapter 3 is, what's the name of it. It's the one with the spaceship Earth. It's a brilliant chapter. It's fantastic. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So, and I think there's another question about, Fern Halper says, here's $10 for recommending The Beginning of Infinity. It's fascinating so far, and I share your feelings about the author reading ITOE. Love all the books I've picked up from YBS. Thanks. Great. Thanks for letting me know. But yes, I'm looking forward to reading the rest of The Beginning of Infinity and sharing my experiences with you as I go through it. Let's see, other $20 question. Gene says, I started listening to classical music after your Beethoven show. Did I do a Beethoven show? I don't remember doing a Beethoven show. My wife and I went to Silkstrom, that's a concert hall, last night, for Beethoven and Rachmaninoff. So good. Many thanks. Excellent. I'm so glad you liked it. I miss going to live classical music concerts. They haven't started up again here in Puerto Rico yet. Jennifer says, can it be rational to enjoy watching wildlife as long as you are not sacrificing for it? Sure. Sure, I mean, we enjoy looking at trees. We enjoy looking at life. We enjoy looking at life flourishing. We enjoy looking at life succeeding. We enjoy, I mean, I like to stand by the window, because if you stand by our window, you can look down into the Atlantic Ocean, and you can see the manatees playing there. And I discovered the other day that every manatees has a, at least now, I don't remember this a few weeks ago, but now every manatees in the lagoon here has a fish like swimming right on top of it. Like in a symbiotic, is that what it's called? Something otic? Anyway, this relationship, and I call my windows now my aquarium, because I look down and we saw just the other day, my wife said, come see this, and we see a turtle. Like we're on the 10th floor, and we're looking down. We see a turtle swimming through the ocean. It's hysterical. This tiny little turtle flapping around, and then they dive down. And we're like, this is so cool. I can see wildlife. I can see, the manatees. There's a whole family out there. There are about 4 or 6 of them. And sometimes you just see one. Sometimes you see all of them. And they look, the pilot fish, Wanda Freeman says, they look like little sharks. They have like a fin, and they look like little sharks, and they sit right on the back of the manatees. And it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to be able to just stand up from my chair and look over. Whoa, look, there's nature. Nature's beautiful. Nature's cool. Nature's fun. It's just not skyscrapers. I prefer skyscrapers, but yeah, I have city view as well. I like the combination. I have binoculars. Definitely have binoculars. I can also see the beach across from us on the binoculars. So there's that as well. I can see everybody going swimming on the beach across. Don't tell them though. Yeah, so definitely, nature is cool. It's life affirming. It's reflecting back that life is possible. Flourishing life is possible. People at the beach, that's not peeping, really. Enric says, I'm reticent to be outspoken of my objectivist thinking with friends and associates with very different perspectives. But I think they see I don't agree. The line of expression is sometimes hard to find. Yeah, well, I mean, it's understandable that you're reticent, but I'm hoping that as time passes, you become more open to doing it and express your disagreement and participate and because you'll be surprised on how many minds you'll affect if you do it. You'll be surprised on how many eyes you'll open. They might not agree with everything, but they'll at least know that the conventional stuff, there are people who disagree with it. And if you do it in a respectful way, if you do it in a thoughtful way, if you do it by reflecting in a reasonable way, in a reasoned way, then some of them will come around. Some of them will actually appreciate it. Some of them will change their minds. Some of them will just know, okay, there's a reasoned position that's different than mine. And that's so important for cultural change. We need you all to be speaking up more. It's your life, but we need you all to be speaking up more. The revolution is coming, and you need to be braver if we're going to avoid bloodshed. Roland says, if you want to kill a creature, preserve it. The money quote in a show that's been awesome from beginning to end. You've really been on a roll today. Thank you, Roland. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Thanks, guys. All right, we got three. We got three quick $5 questions. What do you make of the saying, if you can't beat them, join them, and the sense of life that statement implies? It's a defeatist sense of life. If you can't beat them, try harder. If you can't beat them, change strategies. If you can't beat them, go underground until you're stronger and can beat them. Don't join them. The reason you're fighting them is because they're wrong and you're right. So it's complete second-handedness, defeatism. Don't do it. Have you played the game Return to Castle Wolfenstein? No, I don't even know what that is. Sorry, I don't play games. Monopoly. Oh, don't forget to like the show before you leave. I have to remind you of that. 89 likes, 111 people watching. Frank asks, do you think books like Dr. Seuss' The Lorax are child propaganda? Why? Oh, the Lorax. But isn't the Lorax anti-altruism? I liked Dr. Seuss. Why is it child propaganda? Also, when the Romans built aqueducts, did they care about abuse of the environment? No. Abuse of the environment, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert, but it strikes me first of all, you have to be rich to think about it. There's always been this push to return to nature expressed in people like Rousseau. So it's a modern phenomenon. And it's primarily a post-industrial revolution phenomenon. Right? So that's not completely true. There's a sense in which the abuse of the environment, the source of it is Garden of Eden again, right? But I don't think as a movement it has any, until Rousseau, and then during the 19th century, conservatives. The whole idea of returning to nature, the whole idea of preserving nature was a conservative thing. It wasn't. The socialists, this is interesting. The socialists were all about converting nature, all about changing nature, all about destroying nature for the sake of man. That's what the socialists, the communists, the Marxists, they were all about changing nature to suit man's needs. It is the conservatives that wanted to retreat into nature. It was the conservatives who wanted to preserve nature, and indeed it's the conservatives who created the national park system in the United States and all the national forests. It was Teddy Roosevelt, but after the original conservationists primarily came from the right, and they were anti-capitalist. Frank says the Lorax is environmentalist. I guess I don't remember the book. Ed says, I use Facebook to show contradictions. It won't make a difference to most of the posters, but I get likes by people who read my post. That's good. Yep. It's good, but I encourage you all to post positive things, to encourage people to think positively about values. It's easy and less productive to knock stuff down. Much harder, but more productive, to build stuff up. Stephen Porter says, finished Ted Lasso, turned into socialist propaganda. I don't remember that. I thought the second season was not very good. I mean, it was okay. But the first season was wonderful, and the second season was, but the first season was wonderful. But I didn't like towards the end. But I can't remember being socialist. Maybe. Willa says I'm not being consuming the right kind of porn. Well, I'm open to recommendations, one, and B, most, not all. Most. I don't know. All right, what else are we? The conservationists, the pre-environmentalists. The environmentalist movement came out of the conservationist movement. The environmentalist movement is a new name that came about, I think, in the late 60s, early 70s. I think originally it was conservationists, and then it was ecologists. What did Ayn Rand call them? I think it was the ecological movement, something like that. And then it was environmentalism. And it's in the 60s where the left adopted the equivalent of environmentalism. Before that, the left was pro-industry, pro-progress. This is the big distinction that Ayn Rand makes between the old left and the new left. Whew, all right, I'm done. I'm hungry. I'm ready for dinner. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all the super chatters. Thank you for all the supporters of the show. Thanks for everybody who makes this possible. Starting to travel in March. I'm not sure how we're going to do these shows. We'll figure it out. Thank you, everybody, for getting us to $600. It's part of what we're going to have to figure out how to do in March, is how to get the super chat going while I travel. This is the value of the monthly supporters. It's less sensitive to the nature, to where I'm doing the show from and whether we can get the super chat or not. It's steady. So thank you. If you want to support us monthly, you can do it on YourOwnBookShow.com/support. On Patreon, I'm Subscribestar. Don't forget to like the show. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. We're shooting for 32,000 subscribers by Sunday night. Oh, and don't forget to watch the show tomorrow. Either at 2 p.m. Eastern Time or 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll let you know tomorrow. But there will be a show tomorrow. Don't forget to watch. See you then. Thank you, Free Trade, for the support. Thank you thank you, Best Fed Hank, for another little bit of support. Do you fish off your patio? No, I don't fish. I find fishing is the most boring activity invented by mankind. I don't get it. I never got it. Don't understand it. So I don't fish. I like to go to the fish market and buy the fish. Like somebody else does the fishing. Generally in life, this is a general principle for Yaron Brooks' life. I love the idea of division of labor. If I can pay somebody to do the gardening, I'm going to pay them. If I'm going to pay somebody to wash the dishes, I'll pay them. Anything I don't actually love doing, I want somebody else to do. So that I can spend my life only doing the things that I love doing. That, to me, is success and luxury. Luxury is when you get to the point in life where you only do things you like doing. Like, if I can I hate shopping. So if I can just order clothes online, bring them home, try them, send them. So yes, so I don't fish. I don't fish. But I promised you a video of my condo, so we will do that. I'm going to create a video of the condo at some point here and put it up on like a private site on YouTube, and then maybe for a particular level contributor to the show, I'll give you the URL so you can go watch it. See you everybody tomorrow. Bye everybody. Have a great rest of your week.